The stock futures
Literally.
are following you.
Let me just get down here. Please.
Scott Jennings has made a career of being an arrogant, smug brat on CNN. He's sort of like if a fairy godmother turned a bad faith argument into a real boy.
5 shillings for the possessed toy. Take it away.
Man's made an entire career off of going on CNN and making this face whenever anybody says anything logical. I mean, the dude is clearly paid opposition. He's supposed to be on CNN so that he says ridiculous things for liberals to get angry at. The same reason why Jessica Tarlov is on the 5. But every once in a while, even Scott Jennings isn't able to put a spin on the massive pile of dung that Trump has left for us.
That is one big pile of shit.
Today, the markets took another massive nosedive immediately after the opening bell rung. It turns out Trump's Liberation Day turned into Liquidation Day, as investors hurried to get out while they can before too much damage has been done. And Scott Jennings quite literally hid under the table in order to get away from this news. We'll watch this clip from CNN, and then let's take a deeper look at how people on Wall Street are reacting to day 2 of Trumpageddon.
Is there any way they can make a deal?
I think it's all going very well. Scott Jennings, does that have an Animal House quality? Kevin Bacon saying, all is well, remain calm.
Well, he firmly believes in this, and he believes that, and I heard him say on the plane last night, countries are already calling to talk about what they can do with the United States. He firmly believes in it, and he firmly believes in making this bet. I mean, he's betting his presidency on this issue, which is probably the most closely and longest held political and economic belief that he's ever had. He's been talking about doing it for 40 years.
You think it's a good bet?
We'll find out. If it's right, it'll be the ballsiest thing that ever happened. And if it's wrong, the consequences will fall on one shoulder.
To that end, Megan, and Axios made this same point that Scott is making here. For better or worse, as we're looking at the stock market drops from yesterday, the futures being pointed down today, Donald Trump did this. I don't think he would deny that. I think he would own it. But Donald Trump did this by choice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of shocking. The economy and the stock was at a record high when he took office. So it's just confusing why he would do this. I think that the unfortunate thing here is that he's never going to pay the political price for it. It's people going into the midterms in 26 and then into the presidential in 28. You're going to start to see that these senators aren't going to have the leeway, and these houses, these other members of Congress are not going to have the leverage to get some of his agenda passed. And that's really unfortunate because those tax cuts really could help the middle class and help people. And unfortunately, he's doing the exact opposite here with these tariffs, and it's going to impact the middle class more than anyone.
Scott?
Well, I think the tariffs are just one part of his economic plan. Obviously this reconciliation bill, making the tax cuts permanent, what they plan to do with energy and some other policies. I think he sees it as all working together. On the tariffs, though, their view is this isn't for short-term gain. It's a long-term restructuring of the way our economy works. And I think they would say it's like planting an apple tree. You don't expect to get apples tomorrow, but in the long run, if you take care of the tree and you let it grow, the apples will come from the tree. That's what they believe. Now, as Megan just said, the political consequences, though, that is a question. Will they permit it? Because over the short and medium term, if people don't like the instant reaction, will they go away from it? He's counseling, stick with me. And I mean, that's the job, the sales job he has to do with the American public is stay with me here. It will work.
And that's exactly the question, I think, this morning as we sit here in between the markets yesterday, the markets today, and trying to figure out what other countries are going to do. Mm-hmm. How much runway are even the president's allies willing to give him? I want you to listen to Senator Ted Cruz yesterday speaking about tariffs. Remember, Ted Cruz sort of moved beyond Donald Trump saying things about his wife, but tariffs may be a bridge too far. Listen.
If the result is our trading partners jack up their tariffs and we have high tariffs everywhere, I think that is a bad outcome for America. Tariffs are a tax on consumers, and I'm not a fan of jacking up taxes on American consumers.
Whoa, hold on, Ted Cruz. Now you don't like the tariffs? All of a sudden now tariffs are taxes on the consumer after they've been implemented and the damage is being done. Where was all of this anti-tariff talk before the tariffs were implemented? Didn't want to stand up to Daddy Trump, did you there, Squeaky? Little man Cruz decided to put his big boy pants on and tell the truth. As they mentioned on CNN, he wouldn't even stand up to Trump when Trump came after his wife, but he will stand up for his own political career because these Republicans see the writing on the wall. The economy is the single most important issue in the average American's life, and Donald Trump is managing to crash the whole thing hands-free, like it's a Tesla on autopilot. The Dow Jones Industrial Average traded more than 1,200 points lower, or 3%. This follows a 1,600-point decline on Thursday. The S&P 500 slid 3.6% after the 4.8% on Thursday, and is now off more than 15% 4% off its recent high. The Nasdaq Composite, home to many tech companies that sell to China and manufacture there as well, dropped 4.7%. If it closes there, the measure will be 21% lower than its December high. We are officially in uncharted territory when it comes to the market tanking. The market is worse off now than it's ever been during Trump's presidency, and there's no sign of improving if even Ted Cruz is starting to jump ship. We all know that the rats go last.
Now, before that, he did say he was willing to wait and see how it worked out, and he would give it some time, but clearly, Megyn, not too much time. I mean, you both work in politics, Megyn. What is the time frame the politicians have here?
I think as soon as we start seeing these retaliatory tariffs come in, these members are going to have to start making comments a little bit more that they're not going to give him a significant amount of time. We're starting to see that with China, and I assume that other countries will come back soon too. So I think his runway here is very, very short. I think they spent a lot of political capital getting his cabinet in, and I just think that he's wasting political capital for this reconciliation bill that he did not need to do.
You hear Ted Cruz there. Scott, we've heard others. I mean, Rand Paul, again, there are people who are allies with the president in varying degrees. Yep. But it's unusual for Ted Cruz to take a stand like that.
Well, what you're seeing Donald Trump try to do is basically put new DNA into the Republican Party. The tariffs, this kind of view on trade, this has not been the traditional DNA of the Republican Party. Ted Cruz and all these other Republicans that are expressing discomfort, I mean, they came out of the Reagan era. And, I mean, Republicans just have for a long time not believed this. Now, Trump is responding to a different constituency, which is new to the Republican Party. And it is kind of fascinating to see how they sort it out. Now, what can they do about it? I mean, I know there's some people on the Hill that are not happy about it. And maybe Congress at some point decides to get involved with legislation where they would have a say in tariffs. But that's not going to happen. Donald Trump's the president. He's not going to sign that into law. So right now, I think the pushback is really sort of relegated to just public statements as opposed to any real action.
But that's not nothing. I mean, if more and more come out and say it publicly, that will create an issue for the White House. But to Scott's point, Megyn, the different constituencies, we've been hearing from the United Auto Workers, President Sean Fain, they're supportive of this. So Democrats, how do you talk to some of the people in your traditional base who might be at least open, tariff curious?
So I actually don't think that Democrats are going to need to do a lot here. I think people are going to see pretty immediately their costs increase as soon as these start to go into effect, and they will not be able to afford their just living their everyday lives. So I actually think that Democrats can really message this very easily. You were able to afford more things, and I understand the inflation argument, and I understand all of the different arguments under the Biden administration. But the question always is, were you able to live better 4 years ago? And I think that that's something Republicans are going to have to answer coming into the midterms and the presidential. So Democrats are going to have a pretty easy thing because this is going to increase costs significantly for the middle class.
Yeah, and again, I was looking downward there at the stock futures. As long as the markets continue in this level of turmoil, it does create a situation, the type of screen. Scott, our apologies to you for having the stock futures.
You helpfully put it right here. Why didn't you put it by Megyn?
Luck of the draw.
Can we just shove it to the other side of the screen? I don't understand. I feel like you did this on purpose.
Shoving it to the other side of the screen is the issue. I think that Republicans.
You did it again. Look at you.
It's following you. The stock futures are following you.
Let me just get down here. Please.
Clearly.
And as if to make the points.
I imagine we're about to get a deluge of Republicans coming out of the woodwork to say that they always knew that these tariffs were a bad idea from the beginning. They're going to pretend like they were the reasonable one in the room, telling Trump that they don't think it was a good idea, but they can't stop him from doing anything that he wants to do, when in reality, they're just trying to save their own asses from the absolute shitstorm that we're all in. At least we can take some entertainment in watching Scott Jennings cower behind the table in order to hide from the consequences of his own actions. I'm Tony Hinderman with Really American, and I'll catch you next time.